Episode 301. The Film God's Niece. He has a niece? Katie was 31 years old this year. With exquisite eyebrows and sophisticated facial features, she had won numerous awards in America and abroad and was a rare talent in the entertainment circle with both looks and acting skills. She had also been a good friend of Zeke's for many years. I've never heard him mention it. I heard that his niece's father got lost as a child and they only found him a while ago. That's why the manager came to ask this favor. Outside, the cameraman knocked on the door and the manager said, "I really don't know how he's going to film the show. I wonder what Zeke is thinking." While talking, he opened the door and moved out of the camera frame, motioning Katie with his eyes. Katie calmly took the task card from the production team. "Go to the mountain first to gather? The director's team definitely has something up their sleeves. I'll go discuss it with my old friend first. I can't be pranked by the director today." When she arrived on the third floor, Zeke also happened to come out, holding the mission card in his hand. "Zeke," Katie bumped fists with him and then said seriously, "Are we allies today?"
"Has your cousin agreed?"
Zeke patted his sleeves calmly. Katie's partner was her cousin and she didn't think too much about it. "He thinks I put on the makeup too slowly and already took my cameraman to the foot of the mountain. You're his idol, so he'll definitely agree." Tucker limped over and probed his head out. "Miss Freeman, are you here to steal shots from my uncle?" Pointing at his foot, Katie joked. "Karma exists, little boy." The director was speechless. Who knew Katie had such chemistry with Zeke's team? "So, will you be my ally?" Katie glanced at Zeke again, determined to carry through with the alliance. Instead of replying, he walked over to Bessy's door and matter-of-factly said, "Wait, let me ask my niece." A bunch of cameras were aimed at Bessy's door. The staff knew that the director had already planned not to shoot Bessy, but now Zeke actually disregarded their plan and was forcing her to appear on camera. The staff mouthed to the director, "What do we do now?" Zeke's niece had neither acted nor been on camera before, so the director originally wanted to wait for someone to meet her individually and explain to her about the show. He anxiously gesticulated, telling Zeke not to knock on the door. He even wrote, "Go downstairs," with a thick black pen on a sign. But Zeke pretended not to see it and reached out to knock on her door. He was obviously uncooperative and probably wanted to give his niece more shots. The director frowned. He couldn't possibly interrupt all the cameras at this point, so he could only cut the scene out later. Everyone at the scene knew that she was Zeke's niece, and they all stared curiously at the door, wondering what she looked like. Her door opened. A thin white figure came out. Other than Zeke and his manager, no one else had seen Bessy and didn't know what she looked like. Last night, the director had heard from Zeke's manager that Zeke's niece was good-looking. After all, she was his relative. Judging from his handsomeness, they guessed that his niece probably looked good too. However, when the door opened and this figure came out, everyone fell into deep silence. Even the director holding the sign froze in place. Bessy still wore a white sweater with fleece inside, but wasn't wearing a coat or a hat today. Zeke was a famous handsome face in the entertainment industry, but his facial features were slightly coarse. Bessy was completely different. Her facial features were much finer than Zeke's. She had a pair of dark and deep almond eyes that reflected a cold light. Her skin was extremely white and seemed to shine or even glow. The sharpness of her eyebrows balanced out her slightly soft facial features, making her looks even more glamorous and impactful on ordinary people. The cameraman following Zeke immediately turned his camera to Bessy. In the observation room, a row of screens all showed her. Her profile, the front of her face, from slightly above, her face from all angles. Staring at her through the monitor screen, the director was speechless. Stunned, he finally reacted and shouted into the headset, "What's the matter with cameras 1 through 10? Move back!" Zeke turned and introduced her to Katie. "This is my niece, Bessy." Katie's eyes lit up and she eagerly walked forward. Bessy, hello, I'm Katie Freeman.
Shush.
Zeke suddenly said and glanced at her. Standing between the two, he ignored Katie and looked down to cautiously ask Bessy.
This person wants to ally with us. Is that okay?
Bessy's well-shaped eyes narrowed and her slender eyelashes drooped slightly. Putting a hand in her pocket, she asked casually, Is she weak? Zeke didn't even blink at this question.
Extremely, but her cousin is a strong man and can do miscellaneous things.
Then we'll see how it goes. Bessy touched her chin. Katie blinked repeatedly and clutched her chest. I, a movie star, am being rejected? You guys will definitely regret it. Bessy put up her sweater hood coldly. Zeke followed her closely without a word. The cameraman following Zeke originally wanted to film this scene, but at the thought of what the director had said about wanting Zeke's niece to have fewer shots, he immediately turned away and filmed the floor. Slam. He had just turned the camera when the director knocked him on the head.
What are you doing? Why didn't you film such a good scene? Thank God camera 10 is assisting. You're even worse than your assistant.
The cameraman was perplexed.
Director, you told me to take fewer shots of Mr. Miller's niece,
he said weakly. Slap. The director knocked his head fiercely again, glaring openly at him.
When did I say that?
Just now.
You dare to argue with me?
He knocked his head fiercely again. Rubbing his sore hand, the director followed the camera crew with his hand on his back. If he had known how good Zeke's niece looked, he wouldn't have spent an entire night worrying. So what if she didn't have any expressive power? So what if there were no highlights? She was so good-looking. The show started recording at the foot of the mountain. When Zeke, Bessy, and Katie arrived, the other three were already there. The three youngest people played and laughed together, obviously very familiar. Bessy, this is my cousin. Katie pulled one of the flat-top teenagers over to introduce him to her. This is Zeke's niece, Bessy. The flat-top boy had sharp eyebrows and strong facial features. Glancing at her, he frowned.
Nonsense. How could Zeke have a niece?
How could he not know of his idol's relatives? This was probably arranged by the program group, and they probably found a random rookie. He was about to say something else when Katie pinched his arm. He frowned in pain but didn't speak again. The other actress was Sierra McKelvey, a newcomer who had just become popular. She took the initiative to greet Zeke and Katie. Once the filming started, Bessy pulled off her sweater's hood. She raised her eyebrows when she heard Sierra's name. With a perfect memory, she never forgot a single name. Especially not Sierra, the person whom Ava's former manager had abandoned her for. And also the person she had asked Robert to check on before. She was shooting the variety show with Zeke and Katie? Robert was supporting her this much? Didn't he know who she was? Bessy rubbed her chin. Since she hadn't been allowed to bring her phone to the shoot, she would have to ask him later that night and see if he had misunderstood her meaning. The show started as she thought about this. The director announced the task with a loudspeaker.
There's a stronghold at the foot of the mountain. All you have to do is find the first one. Each group will transport a piece of wood to the designated location on the mountainside to obtain information about the next level. Before the three groups set forth, Katie once again walked over solemnly and glanced at Zeke. So, are we allies? According to the program's group tricks, the wood must not be light. Zeke would certainly not let Bessy carry that piece of wood, so he directly agreed without hesitation this time. Yes.
The wooden stronghold was easy to find. He stared at the 10-foot-long piece of wood and prepared to carry the nearly 150 pounds of it with Katie's cousin. Sierra and her group of boys had already lifted their pieces. She seemed to be struggling, but didn't ask for help. Zeke, after we finish lifting one, you can take a break and then I'll lift another one with your partner. Katie's cousin quickly said. The show's crew and fans knew Katie couldn't lift any because she had a serious hip injury. Glancing at him, Zeke just took off his coat and handed it to Bessy. He lightly said,
You and Katie can go up with us. After we move one piece of wood, we'll come down for another.
The filming had already completed one episode, so the cousin was very close to Sierra and the others. Seeing that she was also carrying the wood, he couldn't help but mutter,
Even Sierra is carrying it. Why can't she? Is she superior? Zeke also suffers injuries from filming all year round. Can't you just let him rest?
She wasn't superior just because she was Zeke's niece. The director was wearing a headset, and when he observed this scene, he immediately raised his card to tell the cameraman not to shoot it. If this was broadcast on the internet, they would definitely curse Bessy. Zeke and Katie's cousin carried the piece of wood rather effortlessly, but because they were worried about Zeke's accumulated illness and lethargy over the years, they only carried one piece at a time. As he walked up the mountain, he saw Bessy walking towards this side too. Katie's cousin lowered his voice impatiently.
Can't you see the road over there?
Bessy stopped by the last piece of wood and spit out the flower in her mouth. She glanced at Katie's cousin and said, "Shut up." Then she bent down, reached out, and lifted the last piece of wood. She propped it up on her shoulders as if she was picking up fake wood. Passing by Zeke's side, she even stopped for a moment and asked, "Do you two need help?" Episode 302. The Boss Wherever She Goes. Zeke was speechless. Katie's cousin was also speechless. The director team was dumbfounded. They knew better than anyone that this was definitely not a prop or fake wood. It was genuinely 150 pounds of real wood. But why did this girl make it look less than 50 pounds? She walked fast even while carrying the piece of wood. Zeke and Katie's cousin weren't too slow and quickly caught up to Sierra's group. 10 minutes later, when they arrived at the stronghold, Katie's cousin and Zeke put down their wood pieces and solemnly walked over to Bessy's to try it out. They exchanged glances. Even Katie couldn't help but come over and try to lift it. She turned to look very solemnly at Bessy. "It turns out you're a real strong man. I admire you." The second level would only be released after everyone was ready. Glancing at the foot of the mountain, Katie's cousin said,
"Cousin, I'll go help Sierra and the others."
"Go on." Katie casually waved her hand. He helped Sierra transport the last piece of wood, and the crew member at the stronghold finally revealed the mystery. Taking out an iron box from under the table, he showed the lock on it. "There's a task card inside."
"Where's the key?"
Katie's cousin raised his chin and looked around. The crew member turned around and took out a blackboard from behind him. There was a physics multiple choice question written on it. A thin line was drawn between a small ball with an electric charge in a magnetic field and an electric field. What was the potential difference between the points A and B? And then there were 4 options? Zeke and Katie, who had graduated several years ago, exchanged glances. What was the potential difference? Katie suddenly thought of Sierra, the program's newbie. Soup Corporation had specially put her here. As a giant firm, the program group definitely set this question to showcase Sierra's achievements in school. The answer must have been given to Sierra in advance. She immediately said, "Only Sierra can solve this. Sierra, you just completed the final exams this year, right? And you're even a top student of Evanston's Film and Television University." Smiling in embarrassment, Sierra held a pen and seemed to be calculating. Within a minute, she put down her pen. Katie's cousin looked impressed.
"So fast?"
Sierra said embarrassedly, "I choose B." Sitting on a rock to the side and biting a leaf, Bessy heard this and scanned the board before lazily putting her chin in her hand. "Wrong," she said. The production team was indeed consciously setting this up for Sierra. After all, the Soup Corporation had invested so much in her career. This program was already popular, and coupled with Zeke's popularity in the entertainment industry, numerous companies were scrambling for the last guest spot, and there wasn't a lack of popular rookies. Out of so many artists in so many companies, Sierra was able to fight her way out as a rookie all because of the Soup family's dominance in the entertainment industry. No one with the Soup family's backing could fail to be boosted to fame in the entertainment industry. No one dared to ignore the Soup family's wishes either, so the crew had specially given Sierra sufficient scenes and chances to showcase herself. This question was one of the segments to attract fans for her. The show they had filmed the day before yesterday had already been broadcast. Last night, the assistant director had given Sierra the question and answer ahead of time and asked her to recite it. To highlight Sierra's personality, this was a particularly complex question that the program group had found on the internet in advance. As veterans in the entertainment industry, Katie and Zeke knew the operations of the program group well, but Katie's cousin and the others didn't know. A disharmonious voice interrupted the parade of praises for Sierra. Sierra paused, and Katie's cousin also looked over. He originally wanted to scold her, but thinking of how she had easily carried over 100 pounds of wood, he swallowed the words.
"What trouble are you stirring?"
and asked instead,
"What's wrong?"
Zeke and Katie also looked over. Katie had no idea what Bessy did or who she was, but Zeke knew very well that she was studying in Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department. To be admitted into Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department, only a few hundred people across the country accomplished this feat every year. He realized that she meant the answer to the question was wrong.
"The answer is wrong?"
Having just carried the wood over, he was wiping the sweat with a paper towel. Upon hearing this, he threw the paper towel into the trash can beside him and glanced at her. Holding her chin in her hand, Bessy chuckled. "No, I mean that the question is wrong. According to this question, all 4 options are wrong." The whole scene fell into silence. The director only took part in the actual filming and hadn't arranged this question. Pressing the headset directly with his hand, he frowned and asked the assistant director, who was still watching the monitoring screen in the studio.
"This question is wrong?"
The program group would be mocked if it was really so. The assistant director had been responsible for the question. Holding the headset, he replied,
"This is a real question we downloaded from the internet. There's even a clear analysis below the answer, so it can't be wrong."
The program's staff had all worked for several years and were veterans. They didn't understand this kind of question. They just wanted to fool the audience with the most difficult question they could, and then make Sierra stand out by answering it. Upon hearing this, the director felt relieved and immediately held up a sign saying,
"No problem,"
to Zeke. Seeing the director's sign, Sierra heaved a sigh of relief and turned towards Bessy. "I've done the calculations several times. There's nothing wrong," she said. She appeared nonchalant, as if she didn't mind Bessy's words. "Maybe this girl read the question wrong. Can you give me the key to the box?" The cameraman who followed Sierra moved the camera, full of admiration. The crew member took out the key and handed it over to her. Katie also reacted and immediately worked to save the scene. "It's all because the handwriting is too ugly on the blackboard, so Bessy must have read wrongly." Hearing this, the crew member glanced speechlessly at her. Taking the key, Sierra glanced around, pursed her lips and smiled. "Katie, you can open this." Bessy stood up with her hands on the stone, then put her hands in her pocket. Silently, she raised an eyebrow and laughed arrogantly and annoyingly. Katie had already opened the box and taken out the mission card inside. She read out the next mission's content. "Zeke, we have to go to the top of the mountain and clean up our..." Before she finished speaking, Zeke walked directly to the director and said in a cold voice,
"Director, I think you should have someone check the question."
The director frowned. He had heard from the manager last night that Zeke adored his niece, and it seemed his devotion wasn't ordinary.
"Mr. Miller, I already told you there's no problem with the question."
He was originally very satisfied with Bessy's appearance and her effect on the show, but upon seeing Zeke's behavior, his head ached involuntarily. He secretly weighed who was more important, Zeke or the Soup Corporation. This was actually something to watch. When this contradiction was broadcast, the show gimmick would explode. Zeke's niece might even be cursed out by the whole network. The director was originally afraid of Zeke, but if the Soup Corporation was on his side, After all, the Soup Corporation now belonged to the Clark family and was different from the past. Thinking of this, he turned towards Bessy.
You said the question has a problem. Tell me, what's the problem?
Katie's cousin and the others were already prepared to leave and didn't expect such a thing to happen.
Hey, don't listen to this woman's nonsense. She's a typical human with a simple mind.
Katie's cousin frowned, glancing at Bessy impatiently.
Sierra has already calculated the answer, and she even did the calculation several times. You said the question is wrong without even reading it. Have you finished reading it? Do you even understand the question?
His impression of her had changed a little after seeing her carry the log alone, and he had kept paying attention to her. Thus, he naturally knew that she hadn't spent more than 5 seconds looking at the question and then surveyed her surroundings in disinterest. She couldn't possibly have read and solved the question in that short amount of time. Bessy turned around slowly. The potential difference between 2 points, CD and EF, is reversed. So the answer to this question is -30V. The options given are all positive numbers. Her expression was too confident. The director glanced at her, and for some reason, he directly took out his phone and made a video call. It was to a high school physics teacher. He had been high school classmates with his teacher, so he asked straightforwardly,
"Don't say anything. Help me see if there's a problem with this physics question."
He sent a picture of the physics question. 5 minutes later, the director turned on the recording he received, and the teacher said in a clear voice that everyone could hear,
"This question isn't a big problem, but it's a little difficult."
Upon hearing this, Katie's cousin glanced at Bessy and sneered. Sierra heaved a sigh of relief and continued smiling. Then, the next second, the teacher continued.
"The potential difference between CD and EF is reversed, but it doesn't matter. People who have learnt this topic probably all know that the 2 points are reversed."
The physics teacher casually said this over the video. The director and the staff holding the mobile phone, and even Katie, who didn't understand all of this talk about potential differences, were all frozen in shock. Staring at the director's hand, she turned to stare at Bessy, who was standing leisurely to the side. After the physics teacher finished speaking, he realized the director was silent and couldn't help but ask,
"Director, you FaceTimed me just to let me see this question?"
The director came back to his senses, feeling very embarrassed. However, his face darkened, hiding his blush.
"I'll invite you to dinner to repay you. I'm hanging up now."
Episode 303. Northwestern University's top student. After hanging up on the physics teacher, he glanced at Zeke and Bessy.
"Zeke, we have to thank you and your niece this time."
They hadn't checked the loophole for such a big question, and it had been pointed out by a little girl during the filming process. Even the director felt embarrassed, but he still sighed in relief. Thankfully, Zeke had persisted to the end. Otherwise, the show would have really been called out and mocked. The professionalism of the show would have surely been reduced, and its image might have collapsed. After all, it wasn't a big deal if the answer was wrong. But if Sierra could come up with the correct answer despite a wrong question, wasn't it blatantly telling the audience of the shady business behind the scenes? No worries. Bessy smiled at the director. Staring at her smile, the director felt inexplicably scared and even pinched his arm. "I can't believe that she's real. She must be artificial intelligence." The other staff members also reacted. This question was wrong? The answer was also wrong? If that was the case, then a minute ago, Sierra's answer. They looked at Sierra simultaneously. Unable to read the situation, Katie's cousin blankly asked, "The question is really wrong? Sierra, how did you solve it? And you even calculated it several times." Sierra's face instantly darkened. Biting her lip, she fiddled with her fingers and said while flushing, "I must have misread it." The show continued recording, but Katie couldn't help feeling curious. She patted Zeke's shoulder and asked, "What's the deal with your niece? I don't think she paid any attention to the question at all. Is she also a school nerd?" She was really curious. The program team and the director were also curious. All the cameras pointed to Zeke. Under the camera, Zeke just replied casually, seemingly indifferent.
Oh, maybe it's because she's from Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department.
No wonder. She's from Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department? Nodding, Katie agreed with Zeke's explanation and smiled. I was wondering how she knew the answer was wrong without looking much at the question. Her voice faded as she stared at Zeke, and her following words suddenly got stuck as she was rendered speechless. The director holding the sign and the staff at the scene intently stared at her. How could you say she was from Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department so calmly? The place suddenly fell into a strange silence. After a long while, Katie returned to her senses and pointed at Zeke. Northwestern University, Science and Technology Department? Did all the current students in Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department have the face of a movie star?
Yeah.
Zeke turned, took his jacket from Katie, and then lightly said,
She just started at Northwestern University this year, after getting the top score on her final exams. She also just happened to have a physics midterm, so her brain is used to working faster than ordinary people's right now.
The scene was full of people from the entertainment industry, and not one of them was involved in any collegiate department. After passing their final exams, who would still remember the electric field potential difference and the orbiting speed of a geostationary satellite? Who would have thought that the question downloaded would be wrong? How could a wrong question have an analysis written below it? The high school physics teacher that the director had called had taken a few minutes to come up with the answer, so the staff on set felt puzzled over how quickly Bessy knew the answer without even writing anything down. But it all made sense now that he said she was a student from Northwestern University's Science and Technology Department. Northwestern University alone was looked up to by 99% of the entertainment industry, and this was without even mentioning the students from the 4 major departments. And the physics major had a reputation for high scores throughout the country. It only accepted a few students every year, and any random person inside was either a top scorer or second place in their particular region. It was a place full of top and second place scorers. To do physics questions in front of her, it was like teaching one's grandmother to suck eggs. Zeke, enough. Put away your triumphant expression. Taking a deep breath, Katie couldn't help but steal a few more glances at Bessy. She really wouldn't have guessed it by looking at her. She circled her several times. She originally thought she was from the arts department, but who knew that she was a true scholar? Katie's cousin also stared at her in shock. But Sierra stood aside, trying hard to maintain her smile. When she saw her cameraman involuntarily taking footage of Bessy, her calm face finally couldn't bear it. Only a few assistant directors knew that the answer had been given to Sierra in advance. But neither the cameramen or the insiders knew. Now that she had made such an error, everyone exchanged glances, all of them having the same thoughts. Who knew that she actually copied an answer in front of the real school nerd? She was completely exposed now. Sierra's cameramen weren't so much in awe of her anymore. Having noticed the gazes of the staff, she no longer had the mood to continue staying here. She lowered her head, not daring to take a step forward. Her face flushed slightly, and hung her head even further when she noticed Katie's cousin staring suspiciously at her. Let's hurry up the mountain. The show had to continue recording. As for the question, they would do it again in the next episode. The chief director couldn't help but look for an opportunity to ask Zeke's manager.
Why didn't you tell me that Mr. Miller's niece was a student of Northwestern University and the final exam's top scorer?
If he had known, why would he have struggled for so long, and how could he have dared to pose such a difficult question to her? The manager glanced at him strangely.
I was focused on worrying over her making mistakes in the show. Why would I especially inform you of such a small matter?
The director and everyone else was speechless. What the fuck? The director looked at him with rage. During the show, the director's phone suddenly rang.
Hello?
He picked up the call. It was from his immediate boss, so he spoke respectfully. On the other end of the line, the boss's tone was very simple and rude.
My boss wants to watch the show's footage as it comes in.
The director was stunned.
Which boss?
Nothing like this had ever happened since they had first broadcast.
President Soup called specifically to order it. You just need to do it well.
Although the immediate boss's words were vague, the director could tell that his boss's name probably couldn't be mentioned. He quickly gave the orders to the crew to handle the matter seriously. Meanwhile, the show had moved on to the next scene.
The program team is so conscientious this time.
Zeke tapped his finger onto the task card, glancing at the exquisite, small Western-style building in front of him. Because there was only one sentence on the task card Katie had unlocked. Everyone has worked hard. Please head to the mountain villa for a good lunch. They originally thought it would take a long time to find the hilltop villa, but they saw it the moment they started along the mountain road. Lunch was already placed in the entryway of the hilltop villa. There was a pile of delicious food on the rectangular table. Violin music was even playing in the hall. They only played 2 songs over and over, though. Katie sat on one side of the table and waved Bessy over. In the end, Katie sat in the middle, while Bessy and Sierra sat on either side of her. Their respective partners sat opposite them. For some reason, I keep feeling uneasy about this meal. Katie had a good sense of variety shows and had been feeling puzzled about the atmosphere. Zeke ignored her and asked Bessy,
Are you eating well?
Grabbing some food with her fork, Bessy nodded. Yeah. Katie wiped her face and turned to the camera, her expression pained. My old friend changed after having a niece and doesn't treat me like before. Her cousin opposite her was taken aback.
Cousin, since when did Zeke not ask you about your food? He used to treat you like that too.
Katie was speechless. During the meal, Sierra rarely spoke, but Katie would ask her questions every so often. After eating for half an hour, all of them put down their forks. Katie's cousin looked up.
Why haven't the program crew done anything yet?
As soon as he finished speaking, a speaker from the program crew suddenly sounded.
During the time the players were eating, the villa owner returned. Unfortunately, because you ate the villa's banquet without permission, the villa owner has now locked you inside. Players, you now have half an hour to escape from this locked room. Otherwise, you'll receive top-level punishment. The show crew is waiting for you outside.
As the voice faded, everyone realized the doors had already been locked. Click. The brightest headlights above were turned off, leaving only a few dim lights.
Escape the room? They're playing such a tricky game.
Katie's cousin said excitedly and stood up eagerly.
Then let's start looking for clues.
He walked over to examine the door, which had a code lock on it.
We're looking for a 6-digit code.
Sierra picked up the 6th-level Rubik's Cube from the table. Is there information here? Katie's eyes lit up. Yeah, who can solve the Rubik's Cube? I can't. Katie's cousin was looking through various drawers for clues. Hearing this, he quickly waved his hand.
I've memorized the formula for the 4th-level Rubik's Cube, but the 6th level is for masters.
Zeke glanced at Bessy and found that she was observing one of the violin players. She didn't pay attention to the rest of them. I know a little about the 6th-level cubes, Sierra said embarrassedly. Katie handed her the Rubik's Cube. Then we'll hand this to you. Good. Sierra impatiently sat down at the table and started solving it. She had apparently learned how to play the Rubik's Cube before, so she quickly started turning the pieces. She completed the first face, and Katie's cousin stood beside her exclaiming,
You actually know how to solve a 6th-level Rubik's Cube. That's amazing.
Looking up, she smiled bashfully. I liked playing this as a child. On the monitor outside, the director glanced at Bessy, who was calmly observing the structure of the room. He pressed his headset to ask the assistant director,
Are there any more physics-related puzzles in the escape room?
Episode 304. Are all nerds so arrogant?
Don't worry, there are none. The 6-digit passwords are in other areas.
The director heaved a sigh of relief. Thank God there was none. This escape room was meant to make it impossible for the guests to pass, and the wool yarn punishment was also the key focus of the show. He just finished sighing when suddenly he heard Bessy's voice through the speaker. The first number is 4. Because of her status as a Northwestern University school nerd, everyone in the room now leaned towards believing her. Katie immediately came over. How did you get it? Putting her hand in her pocket, Bessy pointed to the mural on the wall. This is the order of the planets in the solar system. According to the Babylonian system of the days of the week, the sun, moon, water, fire, wood, and gold correspond to Sunday and Saturdays and are calculated by the rotation of the Earth. I took a look at the planet corresponding to the astronomical astrology in the picture, which happened to be the Babylonian week system's Thursday. The director glanced at the staff.
She found it so easily?
The staff weakly replied.
Director, is this easy?
The director was speechless. Which normal person would think of the Babylonian system? People who didn't study geography couldn't even recognize more than a few big planets, so how could they possibly figure out the corresponding planets based on astronomical phenomena? The assistant director pressed the headset and quickly said,
Don't worry, the last 2 numbers are too difficult. They won't be able to find it. Didn't you complain that my settings were too difficult just now?
The director reluctantly nodded. Fortunately, the following numbers were difficult, or he would really go crazy dealing with Bessy's intelligence. The director's team was about to go crazy just thinking about it. The other people in the villa also fell silent for a while, and Katie blankly stared at Zeke.
Hey, are all school nerds like this now?
Zeke was also a little at a loss as he stared at Bessy. Bessy's voice was very calm as she looked around, frowning. Let's continue searching. There are 5 more numbers. In the next 10 minutes, 3 more numbers were found, one after another, for a total of 4 numbers. The director's team collapsed.
Will they really find it?
The director was full of worry. The deputy director vouched for the puzzle again.
Don't worry, she'll never solve the last 2 figures.
What do you think this is? Katie found a piece of paper from a thick dictionary, lined with horizontal dots. She directly showed it to Bessy. Bessy took a look. Morse code. Katie recognized this and said excitedly, Is this a number? Bessy shook her head. Katie was instantly discouraged. But Bessy glanced at the violin music playing in a loop and thoughtfully said, The next number is probably 3. 3? Katie and Sierra's teammates gathered around with Zeke and the others. How did you get this? For these 2 violin pieces, the letters are represented by the numbers on the stave. According to the graphic plan of the music, the second song that overlaps with the first song on its digits forms 256. If written in hexadecimal, it's exactly 100, which corresponds to the Morse code's number 3. The overlap between the second and first stave is the digit 256. The hexadecimal. Katie looked up at her. Do all school nerds learn these things? Stunned, Bessy defended her teachers. No, teachers don't teach these kinds of messy things. Our teachers are very responsible. Katie and the others were speechless. Messy things? The director had fallen into complete silence, and the talkative assistant director suddenly lost his voice as well. In the hall, it took Sierra 15 minutes to finally restore the 6th level Rubik's Cube. The 6th level Rubik's Cube was a relatively difficult one, and the difficulty was much higher than that of the 4th and 5th level Rubik's Cubes. Ordinary people never memorized the formula, so it was difficult to solve even the 4th level Rubik's Cube. Upon seeing this, Katie's cousin immediately came over and exclaimed, Amazing! Sierra finally heaved a sigh of relief, and a layer of cold sweat rolled down her back. She unfolded the piece of paper in her hand. This is the piece of paper that fell out after I solved it. She opened it and saw a capital H. It wasn't a number. What did it mean? Staring at the H, a terrible thought suddenly popped up in Katie's mind. The program team couldn't have let us solve the Rubik's Cube just to get an H, could they? Sierra, do you know how to figure this out? Ordinary people found it difficult to solve the 6th level Rubik's Cube. not to mention solving the H face. Shaking her head, Sierra pursed her lips. Sorry. They had already found all of the other 5 numbers and were lacking only the last one. The group of them was a little discouraged, but unwilling to give up. Half the time had passed already. Katie and the others turned the Rubik's Cube around in disbelief, but still couldn't grasp how it worked. After trying it, they put it down. Katie's cousin was trying to reason with the director. Glancing at the Rubik's Cube, Bessy cracked her knuckles and casually picked it up. Don't worry, it's already impressive that you managed to solve the 6th order Rubik's Cube. I don't even know what it was. Katie comforted Sierra and then turned to the camera. Stupid director. I think you're purposefully trying to make it impossible for us to escape, right? The director's voice was very cool.
You only have 10 minutes left. Players, you can choose to give up.
Zeke frowned and glanced around the room. Bessy had basically found all 5 of the numbers, so he really didn't want to give up. Stupid. Katie's cousin and Katie started scolding the director together. At this time, someone said from behind them, "The last number is 9.
How do you know?
Katie's cousin turned and paused halfway through his sentence. Every face on the Rubik's Cube in Bessy's hand now formed the word H. Sitting on the table with her legs dangling, she casually pulled out a piece of paper from it with the number 9 written on the back. What was this? Because of the incessant waves of high energy, Katie's brain had lost all thoughts. She had tried the Rubik's Cube before talking to the director, but Bessy had solved it before she finished talking? That was to say, she finished all the H faces within a minute while everyone was talking to the director? If she had solved the Rubik's Cube after working on it from the beginning, everyone would have been so shocked. But Sierra had used 15 minutes to solve the first part of the Rubik's Cube, and Bessy had only used 1 minute. Holding the paper in her hand, Bessy got up from the table. Can we go out now? Seeing how motionless the others were, she took the lead in going to the door, and then entered the numbers. Bam! The door opened. Rays of sunlight shone in from outside. Sierra followed behind Zeke and the others, staying at the back. She took off her microphone and asked Katie's cousin, "Is this girl really Zeke Miller's niece?" Taking off his microphone as well, Katie's cousin stared at Bessy with a complicated expression.
She's probably a rookie that the production team hired. She'll probably leave after a few days when Tucker's foot is healed.
He thought for a while and really couldn't see how Zeke possibly had a niece and nephew. Oh. Staring at Bessy, Sierra's expression darkened. Ever since she debuted, she had always been helped for no reason. Her manager was right. Lady Luck always shone unfathomably on her. For this show, Zeke and Katie, both huge movie stars, were cast. And Zeke's popularity covered half of the entertainment industry. Sierra never dreamed of being valued by the production crew like him, and knew that this was an excellent opportunity for her. However, little did she expect that Bessy would appear and break her usual stream of luck. She had a premonition that as long as Bessy was around, she wouldn't stand out on the program.
Director, what about the following punishment?
Bessy's escape had completely messed up the program's plans. Pressing his headset, the director asked the assistant director,
"Didn't you say that they would never escape?"
The assistant director bit his fingernails. Who knew that a creature with seemingly artificial intelligence would barge into their production? The director coldly and unilaterally cut off the connection with the assistant director. Then he looked up and saw a group of people walking out of the house.
"Director."
Wearing a smile on his beautiful face, Zeke walked slowly to the front. His back straightened, his body slender and beautiful.
"What are the next arrangements?"
The director silently retracted his gaze. "The next arrangements? We never expected you to escape this perverse room. We had arranged the wool yarn punishment." But even while thinking so, he still smiled in a very kind and beautiful way. Although Zeke's appearance had indeed disrupted their plans, if they edited it well, it would definitely explode in popularity. particularly because of the interaction between Zeke, Bessy, Katie, and the others. But the only thing was, their sugar daddy might not be very satisfied with Sierra's screen time. But this wasn't something the director needed to worry over. He just had to make sure that the program was attractive to viewers.
Because you escaped from the room ahead of time, our program team has decided to let you go back in advance,
the director said in an amiable tone.
Also, as a reward, you can invite 2 friends in your circle to be guests tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Zeke squinted slightly. Time was tight, but he had a lot of friends. If they insisted on finding friends, any 2 of them would come to help him. The director smiled.
Yes, Mr. Miller, are you going to invite your friends?
Director. The director had only finished speaking when Sierra, who had kept quiet throughout, suddenly spoke. Actually, we only escaped this time because of Bessy. This reward is most suitable for her. She glanced at Bessy and smiled gently. Bessy, do you have any friends in your circle? If you do, you can invite them over. The director froze. Upon hearing this, Zeke also paused and indifferently glanced at her. Katie pursed her lips and smiled. Under the camera, her voice was light and she helped make excuses for Bessy. How could such a good thing be monopolized by Bessy? Zeke and I will not be passed over without dishonor. Episode 305. Bessy invites 2 ordinary friends. This show was very popular, and with Zeke heading the guest list, they couldn't casually invite just any guests. Bessy was a school nerd from Northwestern University, and birds of a feather flocked together. Most of her friends were probably school nerds as well, and if she invited them, the guests wouldn't be mysterious and interesting, and the show's popularity would fail. The director and program crew definitely didn't want that to happen. Smiling, Sierra realized that Katie was helping Bessy. Thus, she lowered her eyes obediently and kept quiet. The director heaved a sigh of relief and quickly glanced at them.
Zeke, Katie.
As the director, he certainly hoped these 2 would invite guests, especially Zeke. The people he invited would be influential in the entertainment industry. Looking around, Zeke took a thermos cup from his manager and handed it to Bessy. Then he slowly said, "Sure." Overjoyed, the director told them to wrap up. While sitting on the crew's stool with her chin propped in her hands as she lazily stared at the mountainside, Bessy took the thermos cup from Zeke and suddenly looked up. "Wait, can I invite my friends too?" she asked the director. The director was stunned. What was this computer nerd trying to do? How could he not agree? Under the many cameras, the director's face stiffened.
"This is your reward. Of course you can."
The escape room's codes had been found by her. She had practically led the show all by herself, and all the others did was to help her open pieces of paper or do some physical work. While on the camera, the director couldn't possibly reject her if she wanted her own reward. He just cautiously glanced at her.
"Bessy, are you going to invite your friends?"
Unscrewing the lid of the thermos cup, she saw 7 pieces of tea leaves inside and took a sip. Then she narrowed her eyes, surveyed the crowd, and slowly replied, "Yeah."
"Oh, how many?"
The director counted in his heart. If she invited 1, Zeke could still make up for the other one. 2. Bessy screwed the lid back on.
"What friends, your classmates?"
The director continued asking. Standing up, Bessy squinted and replied, "Just 2 ordinary friends?" The director nodded and finished wrapping, full of worry. Behind her, Sierra stared at Bessy's back and almost burst out laughing. Did this Bessy have such a low IQ? Couldn't she tell that the director obviously didn't want her to invite her friends? When this episode was broadcast, Zeke's fans would certainly curse her. Looking away, Sierra walked back to her car. It was already 4 p.m. when the group packed up and returned to the hotel at the foot of the mountain. The director went to the recording room to check the day's footage. The assistant director asked,
"Are you really letting Zeke's niece invite her friends over?" She's from Northwestern University and her friends are probably all school fanatics. There'll be nothing to watch.
The director flopped down on a chair. The assistant director glanced at him.
What if she invites 2 computer nerds?
The director was speechless. He was now a little afraid of Northwestern University's school fanatics, and even the word Northwestern University now cast a shadow in his mind. Were all Northwestern University students like this?
Not necessarily. She's still Zeke's niece.
He thought for a while and continued.
He might be dumb around her, but that doesn't mean he's dumb around her friends. I think you'll probably want to introduce his connections to her.
He pondered for a while.
I'll ask his manager this evening.
Zeke returned to his room. Tucker had finished his papers and was playing computer games now. Zeke took off his clothes and took a bath. Coming in with a notebook, the manager first checked Tucker's paper. He had only written down the answers and not the calculation process.
Did you copy the answers? It's not good to copy answers. You should learn from your sister.
He earnestly lectured. Tucker glanced at him, then calmly put on his earphones. The manager was speechless. Bad kid. He sat beside him, bored, and watched him play games. 2 minutes later, he walked away silently and sat down opposite Tucker to play on his phone. It wasn't until Zeke came out that he stood up and opened the book.
These are some friends I found in your circle you can invite. They're all trustworthy and can hold the scene.
After working hard in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years, there were rumors that he relied on the Miller family. However, he himself knew that what he had accumulated bit by bit was all from his own social networking. Opening the book, the manager revealed a list of 20 people who could spare their time tomorrow. They were all big famous names in the entertainment circle. Bessy wasn't part of that circle, but Zeke had already decided long ago to invite 2 friends from that circle in her name.
These 2 are okay. They're a similar age to your niece.
The manager circled 2 capable actors on the list. They were all juniors of Zeke who had filmed with him before and weren't as popular, but their reputation and popularity were still remarkable. Zeke took a look and frowned. Although he wanted to invite more experienced people, their ages weren't very suitable.
Let's go.
He took the list and went to knock on Bessy's door, planning to let her choose whoever she pleased. Bessy had just finished taking a shower. A lunchbox was sitting on her table. Instead of wearing a nightgown, she wore a white furry onesie. She opened the door to let Zeke and the manager in. Zeke glanced at her. Bessy had always appeared cold, and he had never seen her wearing such furry-looking clothes. He wanted to rub her head affectionately at this special contrast, but he didn't dare to do so. He just thought about it regretfully. Her room was a little narrower than his. Zeke sat down on a chair before pulling out the list and explaining his intentions.
Look at this list and see if there's anyone you like.
Bessy hadn't expected him to do this. Glancing at the list of 20 names, she thought they must have put in quite an effort to collate it in such a short time. She raised her eyebrows, and she finally leaned back after a long while and smiled with clear eyes. No need. I'll contact 2 of my friends now. She was about to contact 2 of her friends? Looking at the list of names, the manager was stunned to hear this. What she had said about inviting her friends wasn't a joke?
May I be so bold as to ask, are the 2 friends you invited in any important social circles?
The manager knew her situation and thought she probably didn't know any insiders. Was she going to invite 2 of her top scorer school nerd friends? Propping her legs up and putting her hands on the table, Bessy raised an eyebrow and concisely replied, "Of course." The manager looked at her in disbelief. He hesitantly asked,
"Who are these 2 friends?" "Enough."
Sitting at the side, Zeke glanced irately at his manager and looked at Bessy with a gentle expression.
You can invite 2 friends to play, but can they arrive tomorrow? Can I do something to help you?
Tapping her fingers on the table, Bessy's eyes were lazy, but her tone was determined. They can.
That's good.
Zeke slightly nodded and then put away the list on the table.
I'll go back and check on Tucker's homework.
The manager stared at Zeke hesitantly, but instantly looked away when he glanced at him. The two bid her good night and left. The conversation had lasted less than 10 minutes. When the door closed, the manager stared at it and then pointed to the list in Zeke's hand. He lowered his voice and asked worriedly,
"What about this list? Your niece wants to invite her own friends. She doesn't understand, but you should know how things work. I don't know how the production crew is going to edit this show, but no matter what, she'll look bad regardless of who she invites."
The manager glanced at Zeke. After hearing that she was going to invite friends from high social circles, he really felt like Bessy couldn't actually know anyone in those circles. Nodding, Zeke took out the key and then calmly opened the door to his room.
"I know. You don't have to repeat it."
Realizing that his words fell on deaf ears, the manager directly went in and sat in front of Tucker.
"Tucker."
Tucker took off his earphones and raised an eyebrow. "Go on." The manager was speechless. After pausing for a moment, he leaned over and slowly asked,
"Do you know what kind of friends your sister has?"
"My sister's friends?" Typing on the keyboard, Tucker looked away and casually replied,
"She has a lot. For example, does she have any celebrity friends?"
asked the manager as he put his hand on the table. Daniel, Samuel, Scarlett, Jacob. Tucker's memory was good, and he listed off these names without hesitation. Sitting at the side, Zeke leaned back in his chair and listened with interest. Tucker rarely talked about Bessy, so he looked over curiously and asked,
"Are they all her classmates?"
He had thought Bessy's character would make it hard for her to make friends. The manager took Zeke's list and listened to Tucker while shredding it. The names and personal contact information of each celebrity were written on the list. It would definitely be leaked out if the staff found this list.
"Daniel is a doctor. He's the one who gave me this stone. Samuel is a school doctor. Scarlett is my sister's good friend from Northwestern University."
Tucker brightened up at the mention of this. He actively rattled on, his pitch-black eyes lighting up. Zeke listened very carefully. The manager didn't notice any friends that sounded important or well-known. He poured himself a glass of water and took a sip. After Tucker finished speaking, he still wasn't convinced Bessy knew anyone from any important circles. Not wanting to listen anymore, he stood up lethargically and said,
"Zeke, you guys chat. I'm leaving now."
While talking to Tucker, Zeke just casually waved his hand without looking at the manager. As for Tucker, he was even crueler. He didn't even wave. The manager dragged his heavy steps back to his room on the second floor. As soon as he reached the door, he saw the director waiting for him. Episode 306. Are you free?
"I knocked on the door and found you weren't inside, so I waited a little while."
Glancing at him, the director paused after noticing the manager's solemn expression.
"What's wrong?"
They were rather familiar with each other by this point. Shaking his head, the manager opened the door.
"Come in and chat."
"Were you at Zeke's just now?" asked the director as he sat down at the table. The manager nodded. The director pondered for a moment, then his eyes lit up.
"Has he helped Bessy find people to invite?"
Zeke had a wide network of connections and had many friends, so it would certainly be an easy feat for him to help find 2 friends for Bessy.
Zeke indeed wanted to intervene.
The manager glanced at him and said tiredly,
"But his niece insists on inviting her own friends."
The director was speechless. The manager pondered and cautioned him in advance.
"I'm guessing they're not insiders. They're probably a doctor and a school nerd from Northwestern University. You should prepare properly for the show tomorrow."
The director was speechless. Doctor? They would have a doctor in the show? This might, unfortunately, be the strangest season of all. The manager glanced at the director. They were both thinking the same thing. Especially the director. He just knew that Bessy would make the show awkward. It was just as expected. She was a computer nerd. Back in her room, Bessy continued to dry her hair as she opened the lunchbox and took out the dishes. While eating, she turned on her phone and scrolled through Twitter. She first clicked on Ava's profile, then slowly typed a sentence. "Are you free tomorrow?" Ava was on set. She had finally gotten a role as a female extra. However, the snobby lead actress kept delaying the shoot. Ava's filming was supposed to have been last night, but it had been dragged to this afternoon after nearly 24 hours of waiting. "Director, my part." She walked over to the director. It was summer in the show, so she wore light clothes with a coat for the scenes outside. The director was trying to explain the scene to the heroine, who kept ruining takes. This lead had a sponsor and couldn't be easily scolded, so he turned and took out his anger on Ava instead.
"The protagonist scenes aren't even over yet. What are you so anxious about? Can't you see that I'm busy?"
Ava gritted her teeth but restrained herself at the thought of her manager's instructions. She sat aside and scrolled through her phone. Clicking on Bessy's message, she sniffed and answered. "Yes." As soon as she replied, she received a voice call. "Bessy?" Walking to the door, Ava squatted at the doorframe and bowed her head. On the other side of the phone, Bessy turned on the speaker and reached out for her fork. "Do you have time tomorrow?" "Tomorrow?" Ava propped her chin up and glanced in front of her. "Yeah, come to Hawaii if you do. I have a role for you to play." Bessy got up and poured a glass of water before adding, "It's quite fun." Ava turned around to watch the crew. Her scenes had been delayed again, and the protagonists advanced instead. This was the first time Bessy had asked for her, so she pursed her lips and said without hesitation, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." She hung up, then went to the changing room to change into her own clothes, before going to the director. Smoking a cigarette, the director glanced at her impatiently.
"Why are you here again? I already said that your scenes are at the back."
"No." Ava put on her coat. "I want to ask for leave." She had felt too depressed lately and wanted to go see Bessy to have some fun and complain.
"Leave? I think you don't want to act anymore."
The director glanced her up and down and shook the ashes from the cigarette.
"This role is so popular."
Ava nodded. "Fine, I don't want it." She hadn't signed a contract for the role, and besides getting the money right after filming, it was no different from playing a regular extra. Ava walked away freely. Behind her, one of the crew members glanced at the director. "That girl looks distinctive and had great potential."
"So what?"
The director wasn't bothered. The crew didn't rely on newcomers to attract popularity to their show, and she wasn't even a famous newbie who had her own group of fans.
"This kind of person can't distinguish between what's important and what's not. She can't even bear small grievances. She will never become popular."
If it had been a popular rookie, the director would have never let her go. But since Ava wasn't even bound to him by contract, he really didn't care much. Bessy sent her location to Ava. Then she closed her Twitter. She dialed another number right after that. She was reckless this time and dialed it without caring what the other party was doing. At the same time, on the other side of Hawaii, Noah leaned weakly in a recliner, his beautiful eyebrows knitted together.
"Have you bought the ticket?"
he asked. Simon nodded.
"Yes, we'll return to Evanston in a while. Okay."
Noah nodded and closed his eyes.
"Hawaii scenery is rather nice. Next time."
Simon glanced over.
"No, I won't even stay a single day more,"
Noah exclaimed without opening his eyes. After 1 week in Hawaii, he still couldn't get used to the climate. The phone on the table rang. Simon looked at it and was shocked.
"Noah, get up and answer your phone."
Simon turned to him. Shielding his eyes with his hand, Noah lethargically replied,
"No."
Simon ignored him and picked the phone up himself. He cautiously walked over toward Noah, placed the phone respectfully to his ear, and lowered his voice.
"Great arranger?"
he asked. Initially careless and groggy, Noah abruptly sat up. His eyes widened and his voice turned cold.
"Who?"
Glancing at him, Simon just silently turned the phone to him. 3 words were shining on the screen. God Arranger Nico. Noah glanced at Simon, quickly took the phone, and stood up to walk over to the window.
Great Arranger?
He asked in a lowered voice. Bessy's phone was still on speaker, casually placed on the table. Taking a sip of water from the cup, she started eating and then casually asked, "What took you so long?"
I was in the toilet.
Noah's expression remained unchanged. Not caring very much about that, Bessy took another bite and then slowly said, "Are you still in Hawaii?"
Yes.
Noah looked out the window.
What's the matter?
Okay, I'm here too. It just happens that there's a reality show shooting here. Propping her legs up, Bessy raised an eyebrow. I want to invite a guest. Do you have time to come over? Noah's thin lips were slightly pursed, and his dark and cold eyes looked slightly shocked. He even suspected that he had heard wrongly.
Are you in the show?
Bessy just muttered, "Yeah." Although they had only met a few times, they had known each other for several years. After feeling shocked, he immediately reacted and calmly said,
I can do a few months.
Bessy was stunned.
A few months?
Noah replied matter-of-factly,
How many months did you sign up for? We'll do it together.
Bessy was speechless. She picked up her phone and sent her location.
For you, it's just 2 days as a guest. I won't be on the show for long either.
Noah thought it was quite a shame.
Okay then.
After hanging up, Noah turned around. Simon was pulling out the suitcase and seemed to be getting ready to pack. Putting away the phone, Noah's light-colored eyes narrowed slightly.
What are you doing? I'm packing.
Simon raised his hand and checked the time on his phone.
There's still an hour and 50 minutes left until the next flight. You said you couldn't stay for even a second longer, so let's leave early.
Noah was speechless. He didn't believe that Simon hadn't heard his conversation with Nico. He must be doing this on purpose. Outside, the young assistant knocked on the door and then came in. He glanced around and saw that Simon had already packed up.
Simon, the car is already downstairs. When will we leave for the airport?
Noah stared at him blankly. Simon put the suitcase aside and sneered.
Ask for a refund for the tickets.
Refund? The assistant scratched his head.
Are you sure? Noah said he can't stay for a day longer.
Simon took out his phone and looked down at the address in the message that was just sent to him. Preparing the route, he lightly replied without looking up.
He has succumbed to the great composer.
In the hotel, Bessy had just finished her meal. After packing up the leftover dishes and her fork, instead of immediately leaving, she leaned back in her chair and clicked on Robert's Twitter. She sent a message. Are you supporting Sierra McKelvey? Robert replied quickly.
Sierra McKelvey?
That's good then. It seemed he wasn't seriously promoting her. Robert stared at Bessy's reply. She hadn't used any emoji, and he couldn't tell her tone. Sitting in his office chair, Robert couldn't sit still and called his secretary to ask about the situation. The secretary was stunned.
Yes, Sierra, the girl you asked me about last time. The subordinates thought you deliberately wanted to see her and even dug her up a big opportunity. Give me her schedule.
Robert had a faint premonition in his heart. The secretary hurriedly retrieved a document and handed it to him. Robert reached out and flipped through it. The detailed content of the show and her personal schedule were written on it. She was now in Hawaii. Seeing this, Robert instantly remembered what Michael had just told him that morning. So Bessy and Michael were both in Hawaii? They were even on a reality show? Sitting down, Robert kept feeling uneasy. He glanced at his secretary and asked,
When do I have time to go to Hawaii?
Taken aback, the secretary pushed his glasses up and glanced at his itinerary.
2 days from now? Okay.
Robert nodded, then tapped on the table with his fingertips.
Make arrangements. We'll go in 2 days.
At the Evanston airport, Ava carried a backpack and entered her flight information into the self-service machine. She glanced at the flight timing and dialed Bessy. Bessy, there are no tickets for today. I might arrive late. So you'll have to do it by yourself first. It was now past 5 o'clock, and it happened to be Sunday as well. There weren't any more tickets for the 2 evening flights to Hawaii. Episode 307. The Man in Charge, Michael Clark. After Bessy's hair dried, she packed the lunchbox and opened the door while on the phone with Ava. She had changed into a loose beige sweater with black tights underneath and left without putting on a hat. Her eyebrows were clear and cold, and she just asked, "Is Miss Lee coming?" "Yes, she has nothing to do recently and hasn't found a house yet." Ava glanced around and found a self-service beverage machine. She put in $2 and took out a bottle of mineral water. "I understand." Bessy walked to the sidewalk with her lunchbox in her hands. "Wait a while at the airport. I'll contact you again in 10 minutes. After hanging up, she walked for another 5 minutes and finally reached the small building at the intersection. The door was ajar, so she entered and saw Marvin standing in the courtyard.
"Miss Miller, you've finished so early today?"
Marvin came over and immediately took the lunchbox from her. Then he reached out to close the door and shouted upstairs,
"Michael, Miss Miller is here."
His voice was loud and resonated into the attic study. Glancing at the group of people in front of him, Michael slowly rolled up his sleeves and closed the cuffs with his fingertips.
"Then we'll leave for Evanston tomorrow."
These people were in charge of the Clark family's forces in Hawaii. Seeing how sloppily Michael had made this decision, the middle-aged man in the black suit couldn't help but say,
"Sir, we have so many forces we can't just turn around. One day isn't enough time, and the clearance hasn't been made."
While talking, he handed him a document full of numbers and resources. Michael casually took it, then flipped through it. He only took a minute or two to read it.
"It's enough time. We can turn it around."
Looking lazy and indifferent, he closed the document and casually threw it onto the table.
"Go to Honolulu International Airport in Hawaii at 7 a.m. 3 days from now."
"Sir?" The middle-aged man squeezed his fists, his veins bulging, but he still reminded him patiently.
"Hawaii isn't managed by the Clark family, nor is the aviation sector. The transfer of resources and the number of people must all be checked by aviation. To dredge through all these layers, if it was really so simple, we wouldn't have asked your father to send men over."
The Clark family wasn't weak in Hawaii. Joshua had told Michael to come over to help him regain the power here. To clear these various hurdles would be impossible if the Clark family didn't send someone with authority. Michael stared out the window and subconsciously looked up when he saw a figure outside. A lazy smile dangled on his lips and he replied,
"I understand. Gather everything at the airport."
He didn't bother wasting time speaking to them and directly went downstairs. Nor did he mention the checkpoints. After he left the study, the people in the room exchanged glances.
"Sir,"
one of them glanced at the middle-aged man, full of worry.
"I didn't believe the rumors about Mr. Clark in Evanston before, but today, what shall we do in the next few days?"
Were they really going to furiously transport everything to the airport? By then, in addition to getting everything to the airport, there wouldn't even be any safe passages. Since Michael was so nonchalant, the security guard imagined things would likely be detained by aviation before even arriving at the airport. The Clark family was second to none in America, but they really couldn't afford to offend the aviation industry. The security guard rubbed his eyebrows. This was his first time meeting Michael. Now that Joshua was going to retire, it was about time he picked his side. He stood pondering for a while in the study before reporting this incident to Aaron, who was still in Evanston.
"Go back and start preparing. We'll strive to deliver everything to the airport within 3 days.
The security guard put away the papers on the table and glanced out the window.
"All shipped to the airport? You didn't clear the checkpoints?"
His subordinate's expression drastically changed and he stood up in disagreement.
"Even Joshua won't be able to handle it if the goods are detained."
The security guard stayed silent. Rumor had it that Joshua favored his third son. If his third son was too willfully making a big mistake, He sighed deeply. He had already tried his best to persuade him and not cause a big scene. He was really afraid that the Clark family would fall into Michael's hands. Instead of going downstairs directly, Michael went to his study and took out Bessy's black backpack. Then he went to the stone table in the courtyard and placed it on the table. Bessy drank from a cup of tea and unzipped the backpack. "It's here so soon? Didn't Daniel say it would take a few more days?" Inside was her computer and Daniel's medicine. Most of the medicine was for Tucker. Marvin, standing beside the table, didn't dare to mention that Michael had threatened Daniel last night. If Daniel hadn't sent it over quickly, Michael said that he would blow up his research room. Thus, it had arrived this afternoon. Michael reached out to pour himself a cup of tea, his fingers pressing on the teacup.
"It's not that fast. Daniel's speed has always been good."
Closing the zipper, Bessy propped her chin up. "Are there any flights from Evanston to Hawaii today?"
"No."
Michael glanced at her. "Hey." Putting her fingers on her chin, she stared at him, her slender eyelashes trembling slightly. "Really?" she asked in a lowered voice. Michael snorted softly.
"Maybe there'll be one in 10 minutes.
At Evanston Airport, Ava was watching a movie with her earphones in when someone tapped her on the back. She was so shocked she almost dropped the phone. Looking back, it was Miss Lee. "You're watching Zeke's movie again. Miss Lee glanced at her phone. Ava's head ached. She put away her phone and waved her hand. "Okay, I know. Don't nag me anymore." "Why do you want me to go to Hawaii?" Miss Lee also brought a backpack along. She scanned the flight information and said, "We can't fly tonight. Let's go back and talk about it tomorrow." Ava glanced at her phone. Bessy had just sent a message, and she was taken aback when she saw its content. "Bessy said we can fly over tonight. I think she bought us tickets already." "When I checked just now, there was no flight." Miss Lee took out her phone in disbelief, but she paused before she finished her sentence, because there was an additional flight at 8:30 p.m. As for Ava and her tickets, she thought Ava had sent their particulars to Bessy, so she wasn't bothered about it. They took their boarding passes and went straight to the boarding gate after the security check without checking their luggage. Only a handful of people were in the huge cabin, and it felt strangely like a charter flight. After taking off, Miss Lee asked, "Are you going to Hawaii to meet your friend, Bessy?" "Yeah." Ava took out a magazine without looking up. Miss Lee nodded. Recently, she only managed Ava and was very free. She put on her sleep mask and asked, "How was the filming? Did the director make an appointment with you for the next web drama?" She thought asking about work was a safe topic. Ava casually said, "I didn't film anything." "What?" Miss Lee pulled off her sleep mask abruptly and stared at Ava as if she was crazy. "Don't tell me you ditched them to go to Hawaii." Looking up, Ava glanced at her and replied, "Calm down. I already wanted to fire that director. He kept delaying my scenes. Newcomers encounter such things often. You should just bear with it." Miss Lee couldn't calm down, but realizing that there were other people present, as well as flight attendants around, she lowered her voice. "What were you thinking? Do you still want to be in the entertainment industry?" She genuinely cared about Ava. Putting her hands on the small table between them, Ava sounded perplexed as she answered, "It depends on the situation." "Forget it. You'll forever be an extra." Miss Lee glanced at her and couldn't help but criticize her. "You don't have a good mentality. Just relax and enjoy your time with your friend in Hawaii." Even now, both of them thought they were just going to have fun with Bessy. After getting off the plane, they took 2 different cars and both of them fell asleep on the way. After the bumpy journey, they arrived at 6 in the morning. At this time, there were no lights in the small town, and the sky was just a little bright. Glancing at the slightly dilapidated mountain city, Miss Lee blankly turned to Ava and hesitantly asked, "Is this really a scenic spot?" Ava didn't think anything was wrong and just massaged her sore shoulders. What's wrong with this place? The natural scenery is very good. Cheer up. I can't cheer up at the thought of you rejecting that role, Miss Lee said miserably. Ava stopped at the hotel according to Bessy's directions. When they entered, she took out her phone and called Bessy. Miss Lee asked the staff if she could book a room, only to be told that the hotel had been fully booked. Hey, something's wrong. Miss Lee glanced around the hotel hesitantly. As she spoke, Bessy came downstairs in her coat. The staff recognized her and didn't say anything when she brought the two of them upstairs. After they left, one of them thought for a while and then informed the director of Ava and Miss Lee's arrival. Upstairs in Bessy's room, Bessy flipped through Ava's bag. You only brought these few things? She asked. Ava directly flopped down on her bed. It's not like I'm here to film, so I didn't need to bring many things. Today's shooting started at 7 a.m. Bessy checked the time and saw that it was 6:10 a.m. She went to the bathroom to change her clothes and then opened her closet. Go find an outfit for yourself, she told Ava. Ava didn't want to get up from the bed. She folded her hands and propped her chin up while laying face down. Are we going out right now? It's still early and there's no one awake in town. Can't I sleep a while more? Episode 308. Ava's arrival on set. Having changed her clothes, Bessy was arranging her collar. She glanced over and coldly said, Go change. After spending more than a month together, Ava knew that Bessy would soon become impatient. Touching her nose sheepishly, she stood up to pick out clothes from Bessy's closet. Wait a moment. Bessy glanced at her phone. I'll go down and get breakfast. Noticing the clothes were all very expensive, Ava silently mouthed, tyrant, and then reached out to try them on. Her figure was similar to Bessy's, but they had different styles. Bessy usually dressed in a sporty style. Ava casually took out a blue sweater. The tag was still on it, so it was probably unworn. She went to the bathroom to change into it. While sitting on the chair and drinking water, Miss Lee crossed her legs in surprise. You're so obedient. While she spoke, someone knocked on the door. Miss Lee put down her teacup and walked over. Bessy, did you forget your wallet? She opened the door without thinking. Outside stood a slender figure. He stood against the light, so his face could still be seen clearly. His fingers were still raised to knock on the door, and he exuded a natural charm. The man's delicate eyebrows paused, and he smiled politely. You're Bessy's friend? Miss Lee stiffened and just made a very stupid gesture. She closed the door with a bang. Then, rethinking things, she opened it again. The tall and handsome figure was still there, and his delicate eyebrows were still looking at her gently and politely. Ava came out from the bathroom and casually asked, Miss Lee, is it Bessy? Her voice finally returned Miss Lee to her senses. Miss Lee replied blankly, as if her voice was floating, sounding soft and small. Zeke. Hello. Zeke's dark eyes were slightly deeper. Miss Lee finally reacted and immediately gave way for him to enter. Ava poured herself a glass of water without seeing him, then pulled a chair noisily before sitting down. She carelessly turned her head in the direction of the door. Bessy, you brought breakfast so quickly. Quickly. 3 people stood at the door. Miss Lee, Bessy, and Zeke Miller. Bessy had only gone downstairs for the lunch boxes, and so came back very quickly. I was just about to call you, but here you are, she said to Zeke. She wasn't at all surprised to see Zeke and just came in to put the lunch boxes on the table. Lifting her chin towards Ava, she straightened up and said, This is Ava, my friend. That's Miss Lee, her manager. Zeke greeted them with patience and etiquette. This is, Bessy turned to him, then rubbed her chin and paused for 3 seconds. Zeke's back was straight, his eyebrows were relaxed, and his mouth was arched in a slight smile. After thinking about it, she still decided to introduce him to Ava. This is my uncle, the movie star. You can call him Zeke." Zeke coughed and tried to maintain his movie star image. He spoke very kindly to Ava.
"Ava, right? Do you have Twitter? Come, let's follow each other."
This was the first time Bessy had recognized him as her uncle to a friend. Zeke felt like he was floating. Ava was stiff throughout all of this. After the introduction, Bessy opened the lunchbox and handed one to Zeke. She thought of something and asked, "Do you have a makeup artist? She didn't bring anything with her." Bessy didn't put on makeup. She was too impatient for it. This was mainly because she didn't mix in the entertainment industry and didn't care about her image. But Ava was different.
"Yes."
Zeke took the lunchbox with slender fingers and replied in a gentle voice.
"We'll directly go to the second floor of Building 201 after eating. I'll take you guys there. Try to be as early as possible. The show starts at 7:30 a.m.
"Okay." Bessy smiled. Zeke glanced at her, then paused at the thought of something else.
"You still have another friend."
"He's going to be late." Bessy opened the lunchbox and took out the food. She was casual at the mention of him. "Don't worry about him. Just go to the scene and wait." Zeke didn't ask further after seeing how casual she was. They exchanged a few more words. Then Zeke returned to his room to prepare. He closed the door. In Zeke's room, the manager came in with a notebook while humming a song, and he couldn't help but ask Tucker,
"Has your uncle gone crazy today?"
Tucker silently picked up a piece of bread.
"I don't know."
The two people in Bessy's room had yet to react and were still frozen on the spot. Zeke was one of the biggest stars in the entertainment industry. A few years ago, he had even won international awards. Only he had reached this point in the past 20 years, and over half of the actors in the business set their goal as acting with the movie star Zeke Miller. Ava was an unpopular newbie who had only seen Zeke on television before, never in real life. "Miss Lee, just now, did I see Zeke Miller?" Holding the table, she looked down at Zeke's account on her phone. "And we even followed each other?" As her manager, Miss Lee was older than her, so her temperament was more stable. But even at this time, she inevitably felt erratic. "I think so." Bessy pulled out a stool and sat down. She took out a jug of soy milk, poured it into a glass and handed it to Ava, looking a little annoyed. "Calm down." Sitting down and taking a sip, Ava still couldn't calm down. "Bessy, the movie star Zeke Miller became your uncle?" "Yeah." Bessy also took a sip of soy milk, lazily smiling. Then she slowly took a bite of breakfast. "You'll be recording a show with him later." "I'm recording a show with him?" Ava almost fainted. "And me." Bessy slowly threw another bomb. Ava and Miss Lee were completely speechless. Bessy finished eating and propped her chin up. "What's with this expression? Aren't you happy?" Ava glanced at her with a crying expression. Happy? No. She was scared to death. At 7:20, Ava came out of the dressing room. Since it was an outdoor shoot, the makeup artist had only put on light waterproof makeup for her. Ava glanced at Bessy and Zeke, who were both waiting for her at the stairs, and faintly asked, "Miss Lee, am I still an extra today?" Miss Lee gasped, her heart still beating frantically. She grabbed Ava's waist. "No, you're probably royalty somewhere. To think that Lady Luck would shine on you like this. Filming a show with a famous actor and actress. Especially, that actor had become just Zeke to her." Thinking of this, Miss Lee glanced at Ava uncomprehendingly. "Why don't I have a friend like Bessy?" "Bessy." "No," she grabbed Ava's hand. "From now on, she's your idol." Today's schedule started. Zeke's attitude towards Ava as an older actor was very friendly. Katie knew that she was Bessy's friend and also warmly greeted her. She asked about her basic information, then her school, what her hobbies were, and so on. Ava was stunned. Did reality shows include asking about these things? Fortunately, her resume was pretty good, so she answered them one by one. The director, Katie, and the others all heaved a sigh of relief. Thank God she wasn't a Northwestern University school nerd.
Finally, a normal person has come.
The director searched Ava's information and his eyes lit up.
This newcomer has a good foundation and looks unique. Zeke seems very optimistic about her. With his promotion, it won't be hard for her to be popular.
He continued scrolling down the information and was shocked to see a certain line.
She's even a powerful violinist who has reached the performance level. This actress has the strength and looks. I think we can alter the show a little bit.
Although Bessy was present, the appearance of all the actresses in the program group was greatly reduced. Ava was still unique and was someone to watch. The director was very satisfied. Although Bessy's friend wasn't a big shot, she wasn't from Northwestern University and was even an insider. Watching her performance on camera, he felt her sense of variety was rather good. Since Zeke was promoting her as well, Ava would certainly become popular after the show. If she became popular, it would be good for the show, too. It was killing two birds with one stone.
Zeke's niece has another friend coming?
The director asked the staff. The staff had already asked about it.
He's probably coming at about 7:30. Okay.
The director nodded and followed the cameraman.
The show procedure has to change a little.
With Ava around, the program crew didn't really care who was the other friend that Bessy invited. After all, Ava was interesting and was even a violinist at the performance level. It was rare for someone in the entertainment industry to be at such a high level. Bessy and the others arrived at the shooting location. Ava originally couldn't relax, but after spending a few minutes with the easygoing Zeke and Katie, she finally got accustomed to the show. Today's shooting location was on the three-way street in the ancient town instead of on the mountain. The streets had been emptied and many mission points had been cleared. When the four of them arrived, Sierra and Katie's cousin were already waiting there. I heard that Bessy's friend is here. I wonder who it is. Sierra looked around for them. Katie's cousin and the others were also curious. In the end, Zeke, Katie, and the others came over. Sierra smiled instinctively. Her gaze passed by Zeke and the others one by one. When her eyes landed on Ava, her smile suddenly faded. Why was it her? Sierra frowned, but she wasn't too bothered. Ava was indeed a fellow actress, but she was an unpopular one. Zeke definitely didn't recognize Ava, so it wasn't like he had invited her as a friend for Bessy. The group of four arrived on set. Seeing that it was almost 7:30, Katie smiled and leaned against the doorframe. Bessy, if your other friend is late, you'll have to punish him. Bessy asked the director for her phone and indifferently replied. He took a detour. Oh, he's here now. Episode 309. No Two Kings in One Kingdom. Noah replied with a message saying that he had arrived in the town. Bessy casually sent her location to him, then threw her phone back to the director. The camera was still filming her. The director kept her phone. While reading the task card on the wooden table, Katie saw Bessy coming back and glanced at the end of the road before casually asking, "What does your other friend do?" "He's a singer." Bessy also glanced at the end of the road. Sierra and the others weren't curious, so they kept looking at the old villa behind the table instead. This street had already been emptied by the show crew, and the show was also kept a secret, so no one except fans who followed the show closely knew they were here. 3 figures appeared at the end of the road. Katie, Ava, and Zeke, who were curious about Bessy's other friend, stared in that direction. Instead of moving the camera over to the road, the crew either continued shooting Zeke and Katie's reactions or moved over to shoot Sierra and the others. The director wasn't very concerned about her other friend either. "Then I might have heard your friend's song coincidentally before." Katie leaned on the table behind her and laughed. Raising an eyebrow, Bessy casually replied, "Maybe." As they talked, they could see the three figures slowly approaching. The last person seemed to be wearing sunglasses and a cap. Sierra glanced back and suddenly laughed. He's even hiding his appearance. I guess he's a big star. Other than stars with many fans, other celebrities would be mocked if they wore sunglasses. The paparazzi didn't pay attention to them, and they didn't have many fans either, so what kind of act were they putting on? Ava's eyesight had always been good. She smiled at ease until she clearly saw the face of the third person. She directly stared at the last person, wearing a mask with their head lowered, and then numbly said, "Bessy, I feel like your friend looks very familiar." Some people's characteristics couldn't be covered up by just sunglasses and a cap. As he approached, the other people closer to him also noticed his appearance. Sierra, Katie, and the others all fell into silence, and even Zeke was also very surprised. If he was one half of the entertainment industry, then Noah was the other half. Zeke was the movie star, while Noah was the famous musician. No two kings can belong to the same one kingdom. In particular, Noah was the entertainment industry's purest celebrity. Other than releasing his albums and holding concerts, he never took any commercials, films, or television shows. His occasional compositions for television shows were considered his deepest interaction with the entertainment industry. Not only were his songs popular all over America, but also around the world. The domestic music scene had never reached such a pinnacle before. Everyone present was in the entertainment industry, and they all recognized Noah. Standing beside Sierra, Katie's cousin felt a little stunned and murmured, "Bessy's friend can't possibly be Noah Hyber, right?" Sierra returned to her senses and bit her lips. How could it be? It wasn't just them. Even Katie stared at Noah as he stopped in front of them, then removed his mask to reveal a delicate face. "Oh my God. You're here." Bessy directly interrupted Katie. She casually waved her hand and raised her eyes to the director team. "We can start recording." The others fell in deep silence. Bessy's words were still buzzing at the back of Katie's mind. She had said that her friend was a singer. Yes, he was a singer, but why didn't she mention that he was the Noah Hyber? Noah proactively apologized to everyone. "I'm so sorry for coming late." "No," Katie finally reacted. "You're not late. Zeke was too anxious and we came too early." Then she stared at him with a generous and dignified attitude. "Are you here to participate in the show?" With clear eyes, Noah nodded under everyone's gaze. Holding the sign, the director stood among them in a daze. In his headset, the assistant director was very anxious in the studio. "Why aren't you recording? What happened in the scene? Who came? Why is everyone reacting like this?" The others couldn't help but scream internally. If only the group of staff could take out their cell phones. But what could they do? They had signed a confidentiality agreement. Noah's back was turned to the camera, and the camera crew hadn't been prepared to shoot him. Since he had yet to put on his microphone, the crew couldn't hear him either. Upon hearing the assistant director's questions, the director gasped and replied, Zeke's niece seems to have invited Noah Hyber to our show." He stared up at the sun rising above his head. "Are we going to shoot to fame?" Noah and Zeke in the same show at the same time. In particular, Noah was an anomaly in the entertainment industry who did almost no interviews. If news of his sudden appearance in a show was released, netizens would definitely explode. Yesterday, he had felt afraid of what kind of commotion the computer nerd would bring to the show, and she had indeed brought one. She had directly set off a bomb under the director's team. The director pressed his headset and immediately ordered his staff, "Quickly, change the next task." Because they initially had no expectations of Bessy's friends, the director hadn't given her friends many scenes. But now that it was Noah, the top superstar in the entertainment industry with a unique halo over his head, how could they stick to that plan? While hurriedly ordering the staff, he passed by Zeke's manager. He couldn't help but cheerfully say,
You actually hid it from me. If you had told me it was Noah, I would have prepared 100 scripts for him overnight. But I like this surprise. We're going to shoot to fame."
The manager was speechless. Zeke and Katie were both superstars in the film industry and were second to none when it came to acting. Zeke glanced at Katie, then greeted Noah politely with clear eyes.
"Noah, hello. I'm Bessy's uncle, Zeke Miller."
Zeke's status was on par with Noah's in their respective circles. He was in the film world, while Noah was in the music world. Both of them possessed an unshakable existence. Or the entertainment industry wouldn't have termed them as the two kings of different kingdoms. Furthermore, since he was Bessy's friend, Zeke was 100 times more respectful to him. However, after hearing that, Noah hurriedly took a step back and didn't dare to shake hands with him. He bowed, his thick eyelashes trembling slightly.
"Hello, I'm Noah."
The show started recording. Katie covered her microphone and whispered involuntarily, "Who is your niece?" Zeke blankly glanced at her. He also wanted to know. He knew that Bessy was a little mysterious. For example, during breakfast every morning, she would receive a thermos cup that was handed to the production team unknowingly, and also, Tucker's 3 meals a day appeared in the same way. But now, he was very curious as to how his niece knew Noah and thus had managed to introduce him to another superstar. But during the recording, they didn't have time to ask so many questions, so they just swallowed them. The recording started. Today, they were divided into 2 groups. At the beginning of the show, Zeke and Katie each led a group. But because of Noah, Bessy, Ava, Noah, and Katie's cousin formed a group. Zeke, Katie, Sierra, and her teammates were in another group. In this episode, the theme was Escape from the Strange Town. The production team had set up several missions in a 3-way street. The 2 groups had to find each mission, each with different adventures and designated tasks. They had to obtain clues by meeting the requirements in order to find a way out of the strange town. Inside, the crew had arranged a bunch of suspenseful and horrifying scenes. At the beginning of the show, actors in weird wedding dresses and pale makeup hung around in various ancient houses. The director had already mentioned this to the staff and had added several scenes with musical elements. Following the cameraman, he saw that Bessy was lazily walking with her hands in her pockets. For some reason, he felt inexplicably uneasy and confirmed again.
"There's no mission requiring the use of brain power, right?"
The director didn't want to experience the horror of being dominated by the Northwestern University School nerd again. The staff vowed.
"Director, don't worry. Today's missions are either designated high-difficulty actions or technical skills. They're also in line with Sierra's designated character. The Northwestern University nerd definitely won't be able to upstage her today."
Soup Corporation wasn't satisfied with Sierra's lack of spotlight yesterday, so they had to make it up today. Upon hearing this, the director also remembered the list of designated characters for Sierra. In addition to a great student, she was meant to be portrayed as a technically skilled and pure beauty. Picking up a book and flipping through it, the director turned to the day's main plan. They would help Sierra showcase her profound technical skills. He looked at the line that was specially circled. Supreme level in the poker tournament. As a globally renowned and difficult game, the poker tournament required both skills and good card combinations. All these years it had dominated the game industry and had never been surpassed, especially due to Toby Yearling's influence. This game had become a huge influence on the entire generation. Sierra being able to reach the supreme level would definitely attract a large number of viewers for the show. Coupled with the program's editing, it would easily make Sierra shoot to fame. The director closed the script and heaved a sigh of relief. There should be no problems with Sierra's character set up today. The show started recording. Both groups of 4 were followed by a bunch of cameras. They played games competitively. Zeke had already found a shooting mission and scored 8 points. It was a game where a low-level clue would be obtained if they shot the red hearts twice. Zeke's group was still shooting at the targets. Katie's cousin's strong competitiveness was ignited, and he was about to turn to Bessy and the others to boast of his shooting skills. But when he turned around, Ava was saying, "Bessy, someone actually wanted to buy my composition, the one you helped me rearrange for the exhibition." Noah wasn't talkative and quietly followed Bessy while wearing a peaked cap. Upon hearing this, he pressed the brim of his hat and asked in a cold voice,
"She arranged it for you?"
Episode 310. The next clue, the Evanston Association. Yeah, it was for an exhibition competition for our Evanston Violin Association. At the mention of music, Ava's lazy eyes lit up. But unfortunately, we couldn't use too many instruments in the exhibition, so I found a band and recorded the complete song later. Someone asked to buy it the day after I posted it on Twitter. Miss Lee said that she would help me sell it. Noah paused.
"Have you sold it?"
"I'm still considering it." Ava rubbed her chin and turned to seriously ask Bessy. "Bessy, can I sell it? We'll split the profits." Bessy continued surveying the old houses nonchalantly. "Sure." Noah paused and even seemed to freeze on the spot for a while. After a long time, he turned to Ava.
"How much is the other party offering?"
$50,000. Ava ran her fingers through her curly hair. "Bessy, is my composition and your arrangement worth so much? $50,000 for a song? I won't have to worry about my rent for an entire year." Noah was speechless. Since she seemed to be considering the possibility of selling the arrangement, Noah thought about the big picture, slightly pursed his lips and coldly glanced at her.
"Don't sell it,"
he said lightly. "Huh?" Ava reacted, but then she nodded. She wouldn't sell it then. Although losing $50,000 was indeed a pity. She sighed. Noah wanted to sigh even more. He stared speechlessly at her. As they talked about the arrangement, Katie's cousin stood behind them, unable to chime in. Ava then proposed that they go to see the ghosts in the ancient house nearby. After that, when they decided to try barbecue on the streets, Katie's cousin finally couldn't bear it.
"Noah, aren't we here to film the show?"
Why were they eating and drinking and seeing ghosts? Was this a large-scale camping site? What about their gaming spirit? As he was talking, he ran into Zeke's group in the opposite shop. "Shall we become allies?" Katie stood up from her chair when she saw them and tiredly said, "Have you found any clues? We only have 3. The crew is doing all sorts of things today. Other than Zeke shooting the target 3 times, the other 2 clues were obtained by Sierra. We're trying to obtain the 4th clue now." Katie's cousin couldn't bear it anymore.
"Cousin, we didn't obtain a single clue."
Zeke turned to them and frowned. He then handed a card to Bessy.
"I'll give you the first. I'll try to get an intermediate-level clue later."
This show was a reality show after all. If it was a game show, they would definitely be cursed out if they failed to obtain any clues. Bessy slowly took it and fiddled with it in her hands. "How long is the recording going to last?"
"Until dinner."
Zeke frowned slightly.
"Allies, let's leave together."
He had also realized that this episode was probably designed for Sierra. Almost everywhere they went, Sierra had a chance to showcase herself. "No need." Bessy grabbed the mission card, glanced up at the sky, then turned to Ava thoughtfully. "Let's go." Katie's cousin followed them dejectedly. Even the director felt anxious. The assistant director couldn't help but ask the director, "Did we make it too difficult? Bessy and her group haven't entered the game locations, like the music and game shops we designed, at all." Following the cameraman, the director frowned involuntarily. Apart from their looks, these people really weren't worth watching. As they talked, Bessy's group finally found the first mission location. Seeing that they had chosen the violin shop, the director group heaved a sigh of relief. This place had been completely prepared for Ava and Noah, especially for the latter. The guard was an experienced violinist and was at the master level. Katie's cousin looked at the task point requirements.
Anyone here know how to play the violin? Noah, can you?
He directly turned to Noah. Noah's eyebrows drooped slightly and he reached out for the violin. Then he handed the violin to Ava. He remembered her mentioning that she was a member of the Evanston Violin Association. The Evanston Violin Association was the only association in Evanston whose students could enter the Austria Association, and those who entered were of great reputation and were all geniuses in the violin world. Ava took it and was about to pass it to Bessy. Bessy folded her arms and glanced around without taking it. The old man guarding this mission point heard their voices and lazily opened his eyes. He pointed to the violin on the table.
The premise to get the mission card is to play this tune in D minor, or play your own composition.
He happened to look up and was taken aback to see Ava.
Ava?
Ava had already taken the violin. Staring at the old man's face, she thought for a while and then recognized him.
Oh, it's Mr. Sampson.
Then she introduced him to Bessy. Bessy, this is Mr. Sampson from the association. He teaches the first levels. Bessy hadn't gone to the Evanston Association much after the assessment, but Ava often went to Mr. Grint for further training when she didn't have any commercials, and was familiar with the teachers. Mr. Sampson was one of them. One of the most important factors for people in the entertainment industry was to accurately remember people. Ava would never forget someone once she met them. Upon hearing the name, Mr. Sampson also glanced at Bessy. Everyone in the Evanston Association knew Mr. Grint's chief student. Her skills at the 7th level not only surpassed everyone in the association, but even a bunch of the teachers. She hadn't appeared in the association for such a long time, and many people wondered if she had reached the 8th level. The expert Mr. Sampson stood up and directly handed the highest level clues to Bessy.
I'll give you guys the first card. Which of you is going to play?
He looked expectantly at Bessy. Although he was a teacher, it was only because of his long-term dedication. In fact, he was only at the 6th level, which was considered high in the association. After all, every freshman at the 5th level or above could enter the Austria's association. He wanted to see her live performance for the first time. But Bessy sat down on a chair and leaned against her arm.
Ava will play.
Mr. Sampson sighed regretfully, then personally delivered the violin to Ava. Then he handed the highest level clues to Bessy. At the side, Katie's cousin watched this and craned his neck, feeling very puzzled. The highest level clues were so easily obtained? Even the director watching Bessy's monitor was confused and speechless. Again? After Bessy and the others left, the director and the staff rushed over.
Why did you give them the highest level clues in advance? You were supposed to give them only after they had exceeded your standards.
Mr. Sampson had handed them the highest level clues without them even playing? No one in the crew had learned the violin, let alone joined the Evanston Violin Association. Upon hearing this, Mr. Sampson paused.
Do you know of the Evanston Violin Association? Yes, I know you're from the Evanston Violin Association. What's the matter?
The director felt like something was wrong. He only knew that Ava was a violinist on the performance level.
Search for the Evanston Violin Association. You can't log in, but you can still see the association's general information.
Mr. Sampson carefully put away the violin. The camera followed the director and started filming his phone screen. The Evanston Violin Association's popularity in Evanston was entirely due to Mr. Grint's status in the Austria Association. This was because every year, he was the only person from the Evanston Violin Association who could enter the Austria Association for further studies. Because of this, some big forces in Evanston were forced to give him deference. As a strong man in the art world, his title as Mr. Grint was very well known. He wasn't an entertainer who suddenly disappeared from the internet after 10 seconds of fame, but a master in the art world. He was the first domestic master who could perform at Austria's Royal Concert Hall. The director didn't know anything of this beyond being aware of the Evanston Violin Association and Mr. Grint. He was the original founder of the art world in Evanston. The Evanston Violin Association's official website could be searched on the web, and there was also a registration system where members could log in. The director clicked on the website. No advertisements popped up. The page showed all the internal members and notifications of the Evanston Violin Association. After a few clicks, he found the page with the Evanston Violin Association's members, which seemed to be ranked. 1. Senior student, Bessy Miller, level 7. 2. Senior student, Henson Weber, level 5. 3. Junior trainee, Ava Hutchinson, level 4.
These are the Evanston Violin Association's internal violin rankings, which are not the same as domestic amateur grades. I'm only on the 6th level myself.
Mr. Sampson glanced at the director.
Although I'm still 2 levels higher than Ava, she scored 85 points for an original composition, and my highest score is only 81 points. As for Bessy, don't ask. I can't even bear to watch her live performance at the exhibition.
He was too embarrassed to lose face in front of the camera at such an old age, especially in front of Bessy. The director asked,
"Isn't Bessy a school nerd from Northwestern University? She's a student at Northwestern University?"
Mr. Sampson was shocked. Then he muttered,
"No wonder she doesn't come to the association anymore. She hasn't been there since September. It turns out she was attending school at Northwestern University. What's so good about Northwestern University? Why won't she continue taking the violin assessment? Maybe Mr. Grint actually wanted her to go to Northwestern University."
The director team had been on the defense and guarded against the Northwestern University top students, and had never expected people from the Evanston Violin Association to also appear. On Bessy's team, they had already obtained a high-level clue. Katie's cousin took it. He admired Ava a little now and kept following her like a little fanboy.
"Do you really play the violin so well? How did you know the old master?"
Ava ignored him. Of course, because of the escape room yesterday, he wasn't as rude towards Bessy as before. Bessy fell to the back of the group, tugged on her earlobe, and then stopped abruptly. Ava and Noah paused.
"Great arranger, have you discovered something?"
Noah put on the mask that he had just taken from one of the ghosts.